take two.
Yeah.
So we have a new bit of tech that we are using today. So I'm apologizing up ahead if there are some mistakes in the broadcast. This is actually take two, by the way.
Yeah. Take one was perfect, but you just wanted to do it again.
Just on the wrong camera. So this new bit of, it's a video switcher, so you can switch between different channels. And let's see how it works. I'm apologizing up ahead. A normal pilot, of course, would not do this until you are fully proficient in any new technology. But as it turns out, when lives aren't at stake, you can be a little bit more adventurous with what you're doing. So there are a couple of quotes that this week encouraged me to actually use this device. And one of them that I love, this, Brett, you'll like it, Tiago Forte. He said this the other day. A paradoxical thing about people who constantly choose the most high leverage activity is that their efforts have a rough-edged, half-assed quality because polishing things to perfection is a low leverage activity.
I love that.
That's powerful.
And the other
There's going
one,
to be a lot of people that love that.
Yeah.
And need to learn from that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
the other one that I think is great, and for me, it sort of sums up what we've tried to do here. Perfectionism is a nice way to hide from shipping at a pace necessary to find out what works.
Very relevant,
Yeah. So, we're going to try this device out. Obviously, it's going to help with editing and things like that. But, this thing can do so much. We're using the bare knuckles of it right now. So let's see how it works. But, looking forward to having a new bit of tech in the studio. And, the other thing today, guys, and we spoke about this in the week in our little pre-show briefing. We never, and I was criticized for this at the beginning, we never really introduced each other. We never started each episode and said, I'm Bryan Rosevear and I'm a ex-pilot from a failing South African-owned government airline, and Ryan is the same and Brett does his own thing. And the reason was, I kind of knew that we'd be pushing out lots of episodes. And when you're sitting on episode 46, you can't start each episode by introducing who the hell we are.
I don't even want to know who I am every episode.
No, definitely not. And the reality is, don't you feel that I certainly feel a slightly different person today than what I did when we started last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take the opportunity today, guys, and introduce ourselves. I'll start with you, Brett. And, besides being on the podcast, there's a hell of a lot of other stuff you do. So handing over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Yeah, well, I'm Brett Mark Preston, in case any of you don't know. So, I think obviously the podcast has been one of those epic things that just turned lives upside down for all three of us. I know that was the case. It was definitely for me. But I was fortunate that this whole pandemic lockdown thing didn't affect me as much. Look, it changed everyone's lives, but I was running a business, still run another business, Marari Group, and I was working for some Aero, doing a lot of work. I was pulled in for a variety of things. It was after, I think, about 2 years that they said to me, don't I want to have a look at handling their sales and marketing? So I had a look at that, flew to Paris, had a discussion with the guys, and that's where I started out really full-time with some Aero. Sideline business at the same time. So for me, I had that variety, and that kept me going. Kept me going. I didn't have a break at all during the whole lockdown period. But I think for me, the biggest thing that is starting to define me going forward is the stuff that I do on the sideline as well. And that's I run a thing called A Powerful Life. And really this whole lockdown, and we've had a lot of discussions about disruption. We've had a lot of discussions about guys getting out their comfort zone, getting out there, doing something different. And that's for me what A Powerful Life has always been about and will always be about, is having a look at things and saying, things are going to change whether we like it or not. Are we going to let it change out of our control, or are we going to be in control of that change? So that was the first thing. This whole COVID thing was a change nobody could control. However, during that stage, you could control how you reacted. You could control your mindset, your emotions, and you could say, well, as a lot of pilots and hosties and technical staff in the airlines realized very quickly that if I don't do something different here, my only other option is sit at home and wait and hope that one day I get paid some money and the airline starts again, which is fine if it was a month, maybe, but now we've hit 12 months. So how many people started at that stage to say, "Shush, guys, I can't sit around and wait"? That's what we did here, which was really, really great. We said we're going to start something. Doesn't matter what it's going to do. We're going to do something different. So we took the overall disruption and we disrupted it according to our frequency, our levels, our energies, and we made it work for us. So that has led us to effectively transform. And that is an important thing that everyone, I believe, needs to do. You got to transform yourself. You got to change who you are. You got to work on yourself constantly. If you sit and watch TV, you ain't going to be, you're not bettering yourself in the slightest. So for me, transform yourself, do something better, learn a new skill. Emotions are such a massive thing. A lot of people, just say, well, I'm emotional, I've got depression, I've got bipolar, I'm grieving, I'm sad, whatever those things are. I'm not doing something because I'm fearful. But emotion is not reality. Emotion is what is in our head, and we have the choice to change it. I think a lot of us may very well have been born fearful, born cautious maybe, born with anxiety, and you can't, that's what it is. But you can work with it, you can change it, you can manipulate it. And for me, that is the transformation that we all need to go through. So for me, that's all power. And it all comes from a variety of events that happened when I was a young boy. So I was in situations in multiple times where effectively my power was taken away from me, that I had no control. And for me, that was a trigger. I don't know, still trying to figure that out. But that just said, I'm never going to allow myself to be in a position of weakness again. And obviously, as you go through life, you become more confident, you learn more things, you learn more skills, you learn to better yourself. And you get to a stage in your life where you haven't stopped learning, but you are, nobody can take that power away from you. You are in control. A boss is not in control of you. A partner is not in control of you. And for me, getting everyone to a stage where we are all sitting at our most powerful state. We decide what we want for ourselves. All of that, and if we all had that brings a huge amount of respect. Because if you Bryan, you're in a situation where you're a walkover, effectively. Anybody with power over you, a boss, a partner, is literally going to walk all over you. And it's going to be very difficult for you. But if your boss or your partner understands, don't mess with Bryan. He's got his stuff together. He knows what he wants in life. And if you give him a hard time, he's prepared to take the hard risk of walking away and doing what is going to work for him. If that is the relationship, suddenly that respect is there. And once that respect is there, people don't play with each other. They play with each other in nice ways. They're kind, they're caring. But it only comes when we have stepped into that and we've transformed ourselves. So for me, a powerful life is a great thing. I love doing it on the sideline. It's just, it's working on ourselves. For me, that is the most important.
Can people contact you about this? I mean, are you obviously dealing with people. I mean, it's a people involved thing. So A Powerful Life, obviously details of Brett's webpage in the show notes every week. So check it out and give Brett a shout. Can we talk about, the one thing I heard this week, they're talking about alter egos. You know this guy David Goggins. I don't know if you've.
I've
No.
heard the name.
Yeah. So he's quite a guy. I mean, Navy SEAL, all this sort of stuff. But he runs marathons like one day after the next. One of these guys, just incredible athlete. But he wasn't always that way. And he works on an alter ego. He used to be David Goggins. Now he's Goggins. Because David Goggins was a bit of a weak character. And Goggins is not a weak character. He's quite a guy. You must check him out. And this alter ego thing, are you talking about, power and people and how we behave? And, I'm going to get to Ryan, shortly for, a little introduction as well. But, what's so amazing is, like I said, when I started this now, if we had to introduce ourselves a year ago, we would have been different people to who we are now, which is a great thing because you evolve and the podcast has obviously played a massive role in that. And it's kind of an alter ego on the podcast, isn't it? I mean, you got to kind of be a bit of an extrovert, you got to talk, you got to have something to say. So it's important that you build that character. And Ryan, you've been the most interesting. Brett, you came with you were on this journey already. I think like myself, I started on this journey a few years ago. And I said to you guys the other day, because we've gone through a bit of a week of a slight, not rebranding in any way, but one or two little changes that we've made to better suit the three of us. And, the interesting one has been to watch Ryan, because Ryan is in the position where most people find themselves now. And that position is not kind of knowing but being open to the fact. Ryan, I'm not going to take your words out your mouth, but I said to you the other day, people will resonate with you, the fact that you're open and honest about, hey, I'm a bit vulnerable here, but I'm open to see what's going to happen in the future. Ryan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, look, it's. Let me first of all just start off by saying what a journey this last year has been. When you talk about how things have had to change and how you've had to adapt, it's been quite a thing. It's to say that I've had to scramble was almost going to be a very underestimated use of the word. If I look back at where I was, just to rewind the clock back a bit, 3 or 4 years ago, I was at that stage in my life of the mindset that if I could freeze frame life and just live like that for the rest of my life, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. Back then I had the best job, home, friends, family, not my son at that stage yet, but I had everything. I had great toys in the garage. Things couldn't have been better. And I've now realized how wrong I was about that 3 years ago.
But it was still right for you 3 years ago.
It was.
It
led to now. Yeah.
This is why I feel like such a lucky guy. Bryan and I back in the day, remember we used to go out riding our Harleys and we'd have a couple of beers. But there was always that conversation that would come up between the two of us where I said to him, listen, cuz, everything's cool, but I certainly feel like there's something missing. I always had this idea that I needed to have a side hustle or be doing something better with my extra time on the side. I had that sense, but I could never, ever put my finger on the pulse and figure out exactly what it is that I need to be doing. Because I'm that type of person. I've got so many different interests. I'm interested in flying, motorcycles, working with my hands, computers, gadgets, everything. I just couldn't find that one thing that would make it worth my while in my spare time. Back then as well, there was also all this fear that if you went and shot off and did something on the side, you would jeopardize your cushy airline position. So yeah, when all of this happened last year, tomorrow will be a year to the date that we went into full-on lockdown in South Africa and everything came crashing down. I sat there for a couple of months during lockdown in the spiral dive.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt, but it just as you're saying it now, it was also the date for us where we should have been getting paid today.
Yes.
And this in fact for me was the big day, because we should have got our money from SA Express today for the work we'd done. Not to my severance packages and stuff like that, for the work we'd done, and we'd never got paid.
Yeah.
So back to you, but that changed things for me.
Yeah, that was the start of it. It was everything. All of a sudden, there's no salary, there's no future prospects. We're sitting now in the middle of lockdown. I spent the first 3 weeks of that just typing up CVs, sending it out everywhere, and very quickly got the same reply that most other pilots have got, saying, sorry, but there's no jobs right now. And yeah, you know, I guess I went through a bit of a dark patch in those couple of months, but then very quickly came out of it when I started to realize that, hey man, you can't get suckered into this pit of negativity. You got to get up and do something with your life. Fortunately, you know, being invited to come and join you guys here at SACAA and do some work, get started in the safety department, set me off in a good step. And then obviously joining the podcast has been the best thing for me.
Well, I have to say that when you first walked through that door, it was right after the major portion of it. And Ryan walked through the door so positive, so hyped, so amped. And I wouldn't have imagined for a second that you had gone through a moment of, geez, what am I going to do? I can't survive, yada, yada. Yeah. You walked through the door with a side hustle. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was that. But there was this excitement inside me that came from somewhere, because I know that I'm going to be doing something. I don't have it totally figured out yet, but I suppose it's a bit like fishing. You know, you're throwing your line in the water. You're out to catch the big fish.
But you got to have that line in the water. But you got to have
that line in the water. So, yeah, that's what this whole sort of year up to now has been for me, is trying new things, experimenting with all sorts of different avenues. And it's been extremely exciting. I'm loving it. And there is definitely a change within me for the better. And, yeah, you know, things like learning about computer programs, cameras, sound technology, you know, even working on the safety side, learning everything that's associated with that with this great bunch of people at SACAA. It's just been amazing. So it's also, I think, something that I've had to realize recently, the last couple of days, that I think I almost felt guilty over the last period about being so fortunate and so lucky about having these opportunities that have come my way, while so many others around me haven't been that fortunate. There are a lot of guys that I know are still very, very lost, got no direction. And I was almost too scared to talk about what I'm doing and where I'm going, because I didn't want to make them feel bad. But I've decided that you just can't do that. You have to be honest, and like you said earlier, Bryan, show your vulnerability. And just put out there and be honest. And yeah, so I'm very excited to say that I'm starting to figure things out. I've got a website now as well.
Hey, I cannot wait to see what happens on that website, ryanparrock.com.
Yeah, it's very simple, very basic, but yeah, work in progress.
It's a start.
I love. Everyone seems to have that same viewpoint, and it can come across as such a caring thing that I don't want to tell you how well I'm doing or how happy I am. But actually, that is us shrinking back and holding back. Because if someone is in your life that gets upset because you're doing well, you don't want that person in your life. You really don't.
No, you
because everybody should be in a situation where the slightest little positive thing that you've done, you should be shouting it from the rooftops. Because what it actually does is inspire others. So it's so cool to see, everything that you've done and the changes and where it's going. That's going to be an interesting one.
Look, it certainly wouldn't be here without my teammates. I mean, the first thing you got to do is surround yourself with the right kind of people, the like-minded group of guys, positive, great influence, and the right backup. Because you can't do this on your own.
No.
But you got to get out there. You got to do it, and you get to sort of just let go of those personal speed traps that you set for yourself. I'm very guilty of doing that, and I've decided to let go of a lot of baggage, and I'm just going to soar now, man. It's exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. We spoke about it this week. We said, I'm very conscious about setting myself up to be, like you said, Brett, you're going to get walked over unless you've got something behind you and you're self-sufficient. And, that goes particularly on, we spoke about the branding earlier. I want the branding to reflect something that we don't only do this podcast. This podcast is something that we do, but we do a hell of a lot more than the podcast. So that's why having a website and stuff is great, because you can show exactly what you do. I think having a website in 2021 is critical. I think it's a necessity. If you're a professional, it's a necessity. Get one in your name, get a .com, sit with it for a bit, but get one.
Yeah, and they're cheap, man. It's not like it's an expensive exercise.
Yeah, it's important. You can use it as a base for, showcase what you do. And we do the show once a week. And I was getting a little bit upset because I'd meet people and they would say to me, "Oh, yeah, great, you're doing the podcast." I was, "Yeah, I'm doing the podcast. We do that once a week." But there's a hell of a lot of other things that I do, and you're going to see it soon. So
are we talking about what you're doing and what we're going to see, or we're going to talk about that next week?
I think, we'll get to it. I want to just stay with something. There's a element of, so what's happening is pilots are not being hired, Brett, and you actually mentioned this a while ago. Pilots are not actually being hired into businesses as we would have expected. I mean, as we know, a pilot comes with lots of skills, he comes with lots of positives, working as a team, all those, early mornings, late evenings. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of pros that could be used in any organization. And the problem is the employers are looking at it and saying, yeah, we're going to employ this guy, we're going to invest in this guy, but as soon as there's a flying job, he's going back flying. So they're very reluctant to hire pilots right now, because they're worried about that. And I think a lot of it comes from, even stemming from the interview process, because you probably in the interview, the pilots are probably saying, "Oh, listen, my passion is flying, but because of the circumstances, here I am," which is fine. And that's an honest take. And I'm definitely not encouraging people to lie in the interview, because that is the truth for most people. But I think the big thing for me is, I said to you guys, I don't think I'm going back in the flight deck very soon. So I need to set myself up that I don't need to go back in the flight deck. And that's been a big change for me, because that's the push to say, hang on, you got to make it work now. You got to go do something. And I think without jumping off that ledge, for me, it wouldn't really work. So that's worked for me. Not encouraging it for anyone else. But you said it.
Everybody's different. That's the thing. So you're going to have the guys, and I've had guys approach me and say, "Do you have a job for me?" And a simple conversation. A pilot is a different creature, because they live, breathe. Aviation is in their veins. It flows through their blood, and you can see straight away. Oh yeah, what about? That's interesting. This airline's hiring, and you see the ears prick up. Oh geez, I'm in an interview, but I get excited when I hear that there's a flying job. Yeah. The guy's going to go back, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, how long is it going to take for them to get back into it? And what do you do in the meantime? Because if you commit to something, commit to it. We've had Justin. Justin arrived here. Justin eventually started working for us and is working for us, but he's got a clear date with us. He's committed to a period. That's fine. I can work with that. But it's very difficult for employers when they pick up that a pilot just wants to get back into the flight deck.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one for the pilot.
I can certainly relate. I mean, it's the most difficult thing for a pilot to accept that, hey, man, I can't fly. And it's not through any cause of their own.
It's your default setting.
It's your default setting, but you have to be able to get over that. I'm in the same position you as Bryan also. I'm quite content and happy at the moment with these new things that I'm trying, that I don't feel the desire to have to run back to the flight deck right away, because that's not going to complete me. Whereas other guys aren't that lucky. They need that to feel complete.
Yeah, and I think it's not an attack on the other guys.
No.
It's just actually to show that
There's
this is happening with everyone.
Yeah, but if you want to find yourself at least being made suitable for a job out there, you have to also not totally display that you're going to just drop a company at the first sign that a flying job comes up. That's a tricky one.
Ryan, for me, having understanding where you are is critical. If you don't understand who you are, where you are, what you want out of life, it's going to make it very difficult moving into any other job or starting another thing. So you've got to have a starting point. You know, every single pilot, every single hostie, anyone affected by this whole thing needs to stop just for a while and identify who they are. What are their strengths? What do they really want to do with their life? Was sitting in the flight deck the best thing on earth, or could running a butchery be the next best thing? There isn't one best thing for us. There's multiple. We've just got to be open to prepared to have a look at it. But start where you are. If you don't know who you are, where you are, what you ideally want, it'll make it very difficult.
So I think if we could say something, we got a nice strong team here. But Brett, obviously with your side, I think this is something where people can contact you about this stuff, because this is actually what you do. So please don't hesitate to call on Brett and check out his site and contact him, because he deals with this stuff all the time.
Yeah,
and,
I'd love to hear from the guys.
Yeah, and I think it'll be well worth it to do that. Guys, I appreciate that. I appreciate your commitment as well, and your consistency in being here. I think we'll all agree, if we can call our success that we've had on the show has been because of consistency. It hasn't been because of anything else other than the fact that we've done it every week. And there are those pilots that live, eat, and breathe aviation, and they will go back and fly again. There's no question about that. Yep. And the sooner the better. But you can't. That's not a facade. You have to then be. You have to be that pilot. You can't not keep current on the, what's happening in the industry, and fall back on your skills. You have to then be ready to tackle that opportunity when it comes. And I don't think everyone is quite there yet, but I encourage you to start thinking about flying again if that's what you want to do, because things are starting to open up and opportunities will become available. There's more and more of these pilot shortage jobs becoming available, and these articles that get written, and sometimes you read them and you wonder what angle they're coming at them from. But things are starting to open up. I mean, Qatar flying 411 flights a day. America's picking up. There's a lot of things happening, but you got to be ready to tackle that opportunity.
Well, that's critical. You've got to be ready. If you're going to go back into the flight deck, don't sit and wait until sim training comes up and you've got a job. Sit and study. Watch YouTube. Listen to the Bryan Air podcast, because there's you guys are doing videos now, training videos on aircraft. I mean.
It's something I want to get into a bit more, push out a few. I enjoy the online training side of things, and I like using the video content. I think video is quite powerful, and if it's done right, I think the right people can learn from it. There's another guy that I want to give a bit of a punt today to, Jason Northwood. He's got goaviate.net, details in the show notes. He has put together a fantastic site. This guy, he was at Emirates. I think he was just about to get his command on the 380. South African guy. And obviously with everything that happened, he's now back in South Africa. But he started this one-stop aviation website channel. It's a little bit like Facebook for pilots. It's got everything on there. It's business directories, there's podcasts, there's training videos, and well worth a look. I really encourage everyone to go and have a look at that. He's put a huge amount of effort into it. and it must have taken a hell of a lot of work. I'm also going to leave a little promo video that he made on YouTube in the show notes, so check that out. He's a great guy, deserves the support, but again, a classic example of a guy lost everything, lost his job, had to move his family back to South Africa, but he hasn't done nothing. He's doing a few things on the side, and he's built this site which is remarkable. And we got to support guys like that. I certainly want to support him, and I'd love to have him on the show because I think he'd be a great guest. And I think there's so many guys out there doing these things, but they need the exposure. So if we can help with that exposure, I think that's our big calling card. That's kind of what we want to do. There's another problem coming up, Brett. You can tie into this one. The airline industry faces a little bit of a crisis because there are so many of these voucher tickets out there. There's almost a year's worth of vouchers. Now, when the traveling starts again and everyone's had their vaccines and you're moving on to greener pastures, so to speak, people are going to want to travel again, and they're going to want to use these vouchers. Now, you wonder what's going to happen with this, because the airlines simply cannot give a year's worth of free flying to all the people holding vouchers, because bear in mind, there are a hell of a lot of passengers that are going to travel this year and next year, and they're planning on traveling with this free voucher. And you wonder what's going to happen. I've noticed a bit of talk now in the States about you better start reading the fine print on these vouchers. Now, it might be a bit of a catalyst for people now, that possibly people that have had the vaccine and stuff like that they can start traveling. And it might be worth looking at that and saying, well, don't wait for 2022. It might be worth starting a bit of a travel now, because you might not be able to use that voucher. I'm saying that purely as my own research that I've done. There's no article that says that or anything, but I can guarantee you, if I'm an airline boss and I know half my passengers, or not half, 2/3 of my passengers are sitting there with a voucher, you're not going to be able to warrant the use of those vouchers.
From a business perspective, if you have 1 month of just flying individuals that have vouchers, that airline is dead.
Well, it's done.
It's done. Finished.
Yeah.
Because they need the income coming in. They're always, 30 days away from any liquidation, any airline.
But never mind where they've come from now. I mean, you're starting off, you want to pick up now. So
well, you got to pick up, so you can't have free seats.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But then, my vouchers are all coming up for expiry now. So I've got to have a look, contact Air France, all the other airlines, and find out what it is. And I'm probably going to have 100% response that, sorry, if you haven't used it, you lose it.
Yeah.
Because you can't, because they can honestly say to me, but you can fly. There's nothing stopping you from flying to Paris right
for
now.
Sure. But that's what I'm saying. I think everyone is waiting. Might be worth, if you're confident to fly and go and do it. It might not be usable next year. Just my opinion on that one.
It might not be usable a day after expiry date.
It might not be usable after the European summer holiday. Who knows?
Yeah. I think the main thing that's stopping people from traveling now is still the quarantine periods. I mean, go to England now, you have to pay for yourself for a 10-day quarantine period, and it's not cheap. So that's the only thing that's stopping people.
That's crazy.
I've got some advice. Don't go to England.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places don't go to.
Yeah, unfortunately there are, but just have a look at that.
Yeah.
Well worth it. Do you see in India, I think it's Air India, they stopped their staff, pilots in particular, I think, from using any form of social media. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, the whole whack. No, can't use it. So the employees are sort of up in arms about this. I think they had to cancel accounts and all sorts. It's totally against.
Based on what?
I don't know. They don't want the employees using social media at all. It's not like, I know there's a few airlines around that have had these kind of unofficial bans, but this is an official ban.
Is this an official ban because of the sale of Air India and there's a lot of hype and discussion around it? Is it maybe just a ban because of confidentiality for a period?
I don't know. It just seems like they're trying to...
Or is it to stop pilots from checking their Facebook accounts whilst on the taxi?
Yeah. Could be. It could be.
Answering a call on rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, it says that there's no law in India that empowers an employer to stop people from using social media, but that's out there. Other quite big news in the industry, the two big leasing companies, GCAS and AeroCap. GCAS has just been sold to AeroCap. So you had two huge giants has now become one super giant.
Okay.
Because they were massive. So GCAS is no more. GCAS was owned by General Electric. So GCAS sold to AeroCap. It's quite big news in the.
That's a big merger. We've spoken time and time again to say when are the mergers going to start happening?
Yeah, you're going to see a
There's
lot more of
a
that.
big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big story this week has been the reports of the SAA version 1.9 or version 2.0, whatever you want to call it, from Joburg to Brussels and back. They experienced an alpha floor event during the flight. Now, indications are that this was during the flap retraction segment just prior to the climb up to cruising altitude. Now, an alpha floor event, described simply, is the equivalent of a conventional non-fly-by-wire aircraft experiencing the onset of a stall. And for the non-listeners out there, because quite a few people have asked me.
Well, they're all listeners. They're just non-aviators.
Non-aviator listeners. A stall is when the aircraft is flying too slow to basically keep it in the air. So it's a serious, serious event. Now, alpha floor on the Airbus is a low-speed protection in the normal law phase on an Airbus, which is an auto thrust mode. When activated, it provides toga thrust or max thrust to help get you out of this situation. It's a protection that's built in. Now, there are allegations that the crew may have miscalculated the takeoff weight by up to 90 tons. Okay? We don't know yet. This is an investigation that's happening. But it is a serious event.
That's big tonnage.
It's big. And it's one
big
that...
mistake.
You know, you don't take these things lightly. Airline management wouldn't take this lightly. All the post holders, chief pilots, safety officers, quality assurance people, all those post holder positions that are required, that form part of the framework for any airline. Who's sitting in those positions at SAA?
It's the business rescue practitioners at the moment, isn't it?
So the one business rescue practitioner comes up with some response to this as if he's an aviator, and he's not. Let's be clear about that. Those departmental positions, you can't put anyone in those positions. You have to have the right skill set. You have to have the necessary experience, and the CAA actually have to approve you to be in that position. So it's quite a big thing. Now, it doesn't stop there, unfortunately, because out of Brussels on the return flight, they seem to have broken a noise abatement rule. Again, this is being investigated by the European authority. Noise abatement, obviously, in Europe is a massive thing, airports in close vicinity of towns and villages. So this is being investigated on that side. Now, the CAA are investigating things on this side with that whole alpha floor situation. But we mentioned it a few weeks back, but it's worth mentioning again. This flight took off because of government pressure and involvement in areas of aviation safety where no government official or diplomat or whatever the hell you want to call them should ever involve themselves.
Exactly.
The flight was given the green light after the approval of the following exemptions by the CAA. Exemption relating to the approval of an external training facility. Exemption relating to an external instructor qualifications to conduct training for SAA pilots, recency, CRM, low visibility operations, UPRT, all-weather operations, RNAV, and operations in icing conditions. Now, as a pilot who hasn't flown for a while, I would hate to command an aircraft without being proficient in those items above. In fact, I simply would not do it. I don't blame those pilots, however, or hold them accountable in any way just yet. Truth be told, we don't even know if this actually happened. It's an ongoing investigation, and we've got to be careful to not just point fingers straight away.
I think we've got to make it clear that there is a comment that there is an issue with Airbus. with that. And they're saying the reporting has been incorrect from Airbus. And I read up that is a possibility. So, nobody's blaming anybody, but it's just an interesting dynamic happening here.
It's an interesting side thing. It seems that there was a procedure in place to mitigate that threat, which is what aviation safety is all about. If there's an issue with an aircraft or a particular operation, you have to build in measures to counteract that threat. That's what it's all about. We do that all the time. And it appears that there were measures put in place for that. Whether they were done on that particular day, we don't know. But that'll come out in the investigation. It's an interesting one, however, because obviously those exemptions that I've mentioned now, someone will inevitably take the blame. It's normally pointed at the pilots. When something like this happens, it's the pilots that inevitably take the blame. And quite possibly they will in this case as well. However, I think there have been a few sleepless nights by the signee of those exemptions from the SAA. Because one thing we know for sure in South Africa, that someone is going to take the fall, but it ain't going to be someone in the ANC. And there was government pressure on the SAA, and I feel for the SAA in this case. And also, in a way, feel for the pilots. They hadn't had the training. They weren't up to date. I would hate to jump in an aeroplane right now and operate it to... In fact, if I had to jump in an aeroplane right now, I would not be able to operate it to the efficiency that I was doing in 2019. That just goes without saying.
Yeah, from a pilot's perspective, my take on this whole scenario, I mean, there must have been a lot of odds stacked up against these guys. First of all, this flight was planned to take place a number of days before it actually did. But there were apparently a few technical issues, whether it be with the aircraft or operational reasons, whatever. But I can just imagine that there were things that were building up, a lot of holes in this Swiss cheese being chiseled out before they even got airborne. If there was in fact an error with the miscalculation of the weight, it was probably as a result of a lot of things happening prior to the flights, which may have led to a distraction or whatever the case, which can happen. It does happen to the best pilots, to the best airlines in the world. But what I just find ridiculous is how this whole thing initially came out as it was this flight that took place and these guys were hailed as heroes, and it was all this song and pomp and dance for nothing, for no real reason. I mean, why actually put yourself through that sort of...
Look, in fairness to those guys, I never saw any of those pilots jumping up and saying we're heroes. They were hailed as heroes. It was the media hype around it. Fear 24 and all these wonderful news channels we have here. But look, something's going to come out of this.
You can understand their position, because those are aviators that all they want to do is be in the flight deck. Suddenly they've got an opportunity.
Take the company jet for a spin.
Exactly. Who's not going to do that?
Yeah, without anyone watching.
However, the guys, maybe they felt that, if it was their error, maybe they did not realize that they weren't proficient enough. Maybe they thought, I'm okay with this. I don't know. As a very low-time private pilot many years ago, if there was a situation that I didn't like, I pulled back and said, I'd rather not fly today. I'll fly next weekend. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not saying that mindset needs to apply. As a professional
pilot, you have to be even more in tune with that.
Well, that's what I would
to that
hope
gut
for.
Feeling even more. So,
the consequences of it are massive. You can have a stalled. You can't have a stalled aircraft overhead Kempton Park probably at a few thousand feet above. That's a dangerous situation. But as we said, this is an ongoing investigation. It is being looked at, and let's see where it happens. Guys, I enjoyed today. We got a chance to kind of explain where we're going and what we're doing, and encouraging everyone else out there, give us a shout, and we're more than happy to play a role in your next adventure. It's kind of been what's keeping us going. As always, we're going to be here next week and the week after and the week after.
And we're going to be here next week and the week after, the week after. But to all our Indian listeners, happy Festival of Colors, 28th and 29th. Happy holiday.
Hey, awesome.
Yeah.
Holiday.
Holly, H-O-L-I. Holly.
Holiday.
Holly. Okay.
Happy Holly.
Sorry, I got excited when you said Harley.
Holiday.
Yeah. No, cool, guys. Thanks for your support this week. And last week's downloads and everything were fantastic. Keep them coming. And look forward to next week. As always, cheers for now.
Cheers, everyone.
Ciao.